Hello, everybody. I'm Debra Amerson. Welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Smartist Studio Series. Today, we have a very special guest, Albert Flynn Desilver, a renowned poet, memoirist, and teacher who will be helping us explore the art of finding your authentic voice through writing. Albert has inspired countless artists and writers to tap into their creative potential, and today he'll share his insights with us. We're also going to hear about one of his amazing books that has guided many on their creative journeys. So let's get started. Albert, it's an honor to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Deborah, total delight. Happy to be here.
Albert and I are friends and neighbors, and I'm delighted to finally be able to sit down and talk to you today. So I super appreciate you being here.
This will be fun.
For those who may not be familiar with your work, could you give us a brief introduction, your background, as you're so many things, Albert. Tell us who you are briefly, and tell us how you began and how you arrived where you are right now.
Oh, geez. How much time do we have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Oh, God. Okay. Well, so I'm a poet and prose writer at this stage in the game, writing in a lot of different genres. Poetry is my ground, but I've written memoir, as you mentioned. I've written nonfiction, sort of nonfiction how-to, which I think we'll talk about that book in a little bit. Um, I have been writing novels. I've written some essays. So writing in multiple genres. And I got started as a photographer. Way back when I went to undergrad school at the University of Colorado and studied photography and the history of photography, and then moved west to San Francisco, somehow wiggled my way into the San Francisco Art Institute. May it rest in peace. We miss the San Francisco Art Institute. And I studied photography there, but got heavy into all kinds of different art. I experimented with painting and with a little bit of performance and some video, and but ultimately I came sort of full circle back to photography for my year-end review and my graduate level review. And then always integrating language, always integrating words. And when I was there, met the great poet and art writer, Bill Berkson, who became a kind of mentor to me. And he was a poet and wrote for Art News and Art in America and all these great publications. And he sent me as the story goes, which I like to tell, he sent me to a poetry reading one night at the Cowell Theater. And I wasn't really into poetry. I didn't know anything about it. I thought I was just going to see Bill read some of his poems, but it was this huge launch reading for the Norton Anthology of Postmodern American Poetry. And Paul Hoover was there hosting that event and reading some extraordinary works from the anthology. There was an incredible array of poets from all over the world. Alice Notley flew in from Paris, and Ron Padgett from New York, and I mean it was an all-star cast, and I was just blown away, particularly by some of the poets from the 1950s and 60s who I didn't really know. And I'll never forget he read this poem by Jack Spicer, or he read this like little section of a poem from Jack Spicer at the beginning as part of the intro to the whole thing, and there was this quote that goes, unbind the dreamers, poet be like God. And I was like, what? Poet be like God? What does that mean? What is God? What is poet? Like, this is like an elevated thing. Being a poet, being an artist, this is the only thing to be in the world. And so it was that night really that I kind of took off and as a writer and just, flailed my way forward, as it were.
Very auspicious that he invited you and that it was such a magical evening of inspiration, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I was used to going to all these gallery shows for photography, and I happened not to really have anything going on that night, and so I'm like, all right, I'll go see Bill Reed at the Cowell Theater. That sounds kind of interesting, and it totally changed my life and the whole trajectory of creativity for me.
Kismet.
Yep,
Like that.
indeed.
I like that. Okay, I want to talk to you about your ritual. How do you
Mm.
get your writing muscle going? And how do you have a ritual sort of when you first sit down? Do you do some breathing? What do you do to get your mind ready to write? Like share some of your process.
Yeah, I think for me, in general terms, it starts with silence and stillness. And so I have a long time devotional practice to meditation. And I studied Vipassana meditation and non-dual lineages of Vedanta and things of this nature. We're going back almost 30 years now. Um, Found my way to that world through Spirit Rock and Esalen Institute and some of these places, and which eventually I would end up teaching at, which completely blew my mind and surprised me. But that has always been the ground of kind of this endless field and stream of creativity. And I've never, because of that, I think I've never had writer's block or creativity block. If anything, I have like too much of an influx of ideas, not enough time to execute on them all. So sometimes that can be a little bit of a hindrance. But the ritual is really about getting up early in the morning and meeting the day with presence and meeting the day with kind of an open, embodied, inviting in of ideas and um, and always staying in touch with language through mostly through poetry as the ground of all great writing in my book. And no matter what I'm working on, although if I'm working on a novel project, then I'm going to be reading a lot of novels and just learning as much as I can about the genre and what's my take on it. And and then I stop the thinking and just hit the page and allow myself to write whatever's there. And sometimes it's garbage. And I try not to judge it, but it's hard not to judge things when you've been doing it a long time, right? Like this is good, this is bad, whatever. And just let it be itself, and just write into the space of curiosity and to see what's alive. And if I give it enough time, then something interesting will arise, something that's interesting to me, and I'll just stay with that thread, um, and just kind of see where it takes me. So
Yeah,
that's kind of the general
hmm
gist of it.
hmm Do you know Wild Mind, Natalie Goldberg?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
she's the queen of the free write,
yeah,
and the great muse of free writing and creative, mindful creative exploration.
yes, her techniques set me free in the early 90s when I moved to California. I lived in Berkeley and I would go to a gallery and this woman, Cecile Muchnick, had
Mm,
writing classes based on her friend, Natalie Goldberg's style.
hmm
It was so, Albert, I didn't know. I was a visual artist. I didn't know how delightful and mysterious and kooky crazy, like when you start writing something, where it can lead if you're not
hmm
editing and you just kind of let it go. It was really rich. And we'd go around, we'd write for 10 minutes or 15 minutes and then
hmm
go around and share. And it was really a wonderful evening. And once a week, I just was so excited about it. So I
hmm
get where you're coming from. It's another art form that it's beautiful when you tap into that and you just let yourself get into it without that self-judgment and criticism and just see where it's going to take you.
Yep, absolutely. No, she's been a great inspiration for sure. And I went to a few of her sessions. She used to come out to Spirit Rock fairly regularly.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah, it's
So
great.
finding your authentic voice is a journey that a lot of artists struggle with. How do you see writing as a tool for discovering your authentic voice?
Well, I think it starts for me, it starts in that place of beingness, of cultivating your true authenticity to begin with, just as a being, as a as a meat suit, as it were, as a watery creature, and beginning there, and then using like once we have this open space of curiosity, then we can just hit the page without that judgment getting in the way, without that self-doubt and that worry and that fear, etc. And just see what's there on the page. Like the page then becomes a mirror, in the same way like a blank canvas might be for a painter, or empty space for a sculptor, or a dance floor to a dancer, um, or not even a dance floor, just a open meadow for a dancer, where you're allowing yourself just to be immediately there without sort of beyond thought. Really, sometimes thought can be helpful, but more often than not, it's ego intruding, getting in the way. And I think writing, because language is so immediate to us as human beings, it can help us access, deeper realms of consciousness that we may not be um, normally familiar with in our regular daytime, and when we're in our daily thinking. And this can be super helpful for all kinds of disciplines, whether we're writing a poem or wanting to write something for the stage that we're going to perform, or kind of draw out an idea for a new painting via language, any of that stuff. But coming to it with open-hearted um, freedom, true freedom beyond egoic thinking is how we get to that authenticity, I think.
The self is the hardest part to get around, our own self judgment, and
Totally.
that you got to kind of turn that off to take the jump, the big leap into the
Hmm.
unknown. And then it's usually, sometimes you think, oh, I'll go this way, I'll follow this thought. And then it's like, and you turn and goes in a different direction. And that's kind of the magic of art, all art,
Hmm. Hmm.
the happy accidents and the things you discover along the way, like a road trip.
It's also learning to trust your intuition, trusting that it's nobody else is doing it better than you are. Even though it looks that way, you could point to a million different artists and writers, and I do this all the time in my head, and I have to catch myself. Like they're not necessarily doing it better, but just conditions showed up in such a way that they've managed to get attention or whatever it is. And you have to come back to that sense, in that sense of self in stillness and in silence, where you can reconnect with the stream beyond judgment, beyond preference, and beyond opinion, and beyond a belief, and just trust that intuitive sense of like, okay, I don't know where I'm going, but I have just this feeling that the words want to go in this way.
Mhm.
And you have to keep entertaining yourself first. And how the world responds around you is really not your business. Um, and I say that, sort of casually and offhandedly, but that's not easy.
Yeah.
I'm constantly struggling with it. Who doesn't want to be seen? Who doesn't want to be praised? Who doesn't want to be clapped at? Um, but at the end of the day, you've got it's you and yourself and you. And so it's like you might as well entertain yourself, and then if anyone else is interested or wants to come along for the ride, well, that's cool. But um, can't get too hung up on it.
Yeah, it's like you do the best Albert Flynn Desilver of anyone I know.
Yeah,
I'm the
that's
most
it.
original Debra Amerson I've
That's
ever
right.
met. And I think that's our responsibility this time around, right?
Hmm.
Is to just carry on. If we're given gifts, that whispery voice in the ear, that intuitive hunch,
Hmm.
gift, I think it's our job to get out of the way and let that gift speak to us.
Oh
And
yeah.
we give it a voice, whether it's paint, photos. And by the way, you are an excellent photographer.
Mm.
So just, dual track.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. But yeah, I haven't really focused on it in 30 years.
Mhm.
So it's very dormant, but I still love it. And every once in a while, I take a happy snap on my iPhone. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's something there. I got trained, I learned how to see. And I love photography. And I still love going to museum shows, um, and I still have ideas too about. I have this great idea for a novel I want to write about a Gary Winogrand photograph. And it's basically just like seven people sitting on a bench at the World's Fair in like 1962 in New York. And each one of these people is like an amazing character. And I don't know how he did it. You could look at it and see, oh, there's six people sitting on a bench or seven people sitting on the bench. But no, the entire universe of humanity is on this bench within these sort of seven people. And there are different races, different cultures, their emotional states, you can tell from the look in their eyes is unique, and they've each got a universe within them. And so it'd just be this perfect novel. But I haven't written it yet, but it's there, and it's my connection to photography. I write about photography all the time. You know, it's
Have you
funny.
thought about inserting some of your images into your books? I mean,
It has, well, not my images. I did a book of essays about mountain biking and nature and spirituality, but that was with someone else's photographs. I haven't. It's
challenge,
not.
challenge,
Yeah, there's the challenge.
we want it integrated. Okay, Albert, let's
Yes.
talk about, we just said the word challenge. Let's talk about the writing process and overcoming challenges. So, what does your writing process look like from start to finish? You've now gotten yourself, you've meditated, you're sitting down. Give us your approach to that blank page. And we kind of covered this, but kind of give us an idea if what's your ritual, your morning routine for writing? You mentioned morning. Are you like an artist, the morning pages kind of guy? Do you write before you leave in the morning, or is it just your fertile time? Give us like a glimpse, a quick glimpse into your morning process.
Yeah, so morning is definitely the sacred hour. I get up early, 5:30 is ideal, and have my tea ritual, my meditation ritual. Oftentimes, when it comes to the writing, I'll go for the writing first because I just have the ideas are there and I'm excited to go and get to the blank page and just see what's cooking. And so I'll get my tea, I'll hunker down on the couch and just start letting it rip without too much thought. And I always write by hand first to be as close to the body as possible and let it be messy, let it be kind of just un uncontrolled, unhindered, even unhinged, just to see what's going. And and that's sort of the first stage until I kind of lock into a thread. Like recently I've been playing with a new project and I have a conception. I want to do a novel. I want it to be a travel novel. Now I'm thinking about maybe it's got to be a travel log, maybe something to do with travel journals. So I'm kind of writing into those genres a little bit and experimenting just to see what's resonant for me. And then I'm reading a lot of travel books. Um, Florence Nightingale cruising up the Nile in 1854 or whenever it was. And who knew she wrote these letters? And they're fascinating and super interesting. And so what is that like? What does that trigger in my mind's eye? So I let the influences flow in. I trust my own intuition, and I just hit the page without too much of an agenda. And yeah, that's kind of the general gist of it.
Albert, I'm a visual artist and I heard
Mhm.
what you said, but as I look at you, you have a poster behind you of a tree and it was right over your head. It gave us this beautiful head of hair, a shock hair
I
that
could use some hair.
looked like me in a way. I was trying to be polite and it was like, wow, he matched it perfectly. So it's my visual side just came out.
Well,
And
speaking of photography, this is Pente Samalati, a Finnish photographer who I stumbled across in Stockholm. We went to oh, I can't remember the name of the museum. This is fantastic photo museum in downtown Stockholm. And there was a show of his, and it was a ripper, as they say in Massachusetts. It was such a great show, and I just got so inspired. And because I don't know if you can see, but there's the image of this dog
the
stretching
downward dog.
doing a downward dog right under that tree with the two things that are holding it up. I mean, it's just like this perfect composition.
Odd
Unbelievable
moment.
picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful moment. Straight out of Henri Cartier-Bresson, who's a famous French photographer who was all about the moment, all about the instant. And this is the thing with photography, particularly street photography, that I think is so powerful, is when it's done well uh, with such artists that they're capturing the sort of the totality of an instant in time, and that the totality is really here and now in the moment. You and me, Deborah, we're talking here. We're in this virtual world, but we're talking. This is happening now. This is it. This is the only thing that matters. And so you can sort of encapsulate that with a photograph. You can encapsulate that with a poem. You can encapsulate that with a painting. Um, and when you're really there and present, like that's where the magic shows up. Like, I mean, we don't know how many pictures he took from this
Hmm.
series. Him standing there, he probably took like 20 pictures. He was like, well, that's an interesting tree. What is this dog doing in my composition? Get out of there, dog. And then the dog, like, turned into this goddess or godlet creature and did a downward dog in this perfect spot and and helped him get this great work of art.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hey, I just thought of something kind of fun. Do you want to write a poem together right now?
Right now in the middle of our
Like
interview?
a haiku or something? Or would you write us? Is that too much to ask?
Geez, I don't know. That is
God,
that's a lot to that's a lot to ask.
it is.
I'm
It,
not a very like on the spot kind of um I like to conceive. I like to let things simmer and cook.
so
Um,
on the spot, he's not.
on the spot, he's not.
There it is. There it is. Okay, no fair. That wasn't fair. I didn't prep you for that. So we'll just move on from that. So do you keep an idea book?
Well, I have my constant journals.
Do you
Yeah.
scratch ideas in it?
Yeah. Yeah. So even if I'm working on a project and I'm writing into, this novel project or this nonfiction project or whatever I'm working on, there will be like I'll go to a show and something that inspires me and I'll write about it. Or a TV program that I watched or whatever. And that can you never know what's going to enter into the work, right? So you want to kind of whatever, like trusting. Also, this is a thing that I've learned along the way is that trusting those things that you're drawn to, trusting that, and whether that's food that you're eating, whether that's something that you see out on your morning walk with the dog or the cat or without an animal, whether that's a program that really makes you think differently, just tracking all that stuff and trusting that that's part of what's shaping you as an artist and that can go into the work. I think that's really important. So I'm always writing that stuff down and kind of interrupting my general flow of, and I don't really think of it as an interruption. I think of it as like, oh, this is all part of the art. This is part of the journey. So it's okay.
Mhm.
But sometimes if I go too far off topic, then I have to just create another notebook. So then I'll have like a couple different notebooks going.
Same. I burn through notebooks, but I do get rid of them. Do you keep yours?
Oh, are you kidding me? I wouldn't dare. I have this fantasy that the University of Colorado is going to want my archives.
Need it.
There's the ego, right?
Okay, well, so be it for you. I hope that
Yeah. I
happens.
mean, I'm sort of, and I don't really mean this in an egotistical way, but I do think that ultimately all humans are interesting. And especially when they are willing to contemplate, willing to enter into the contemplative and creative life. Not that those who don't do art aren't interesting necessarily, but that it's a huge step of courage and interest. I think everyone has it within them. And so when people are tracking that by making a piece of art, it's really interesting to me. And I love like, you know, I have so much obscure poetry on my shelves that nobody will ever really read. And avant-garde poetry that makes no sense. But that to me, it's so interesting that somebody devoted that, that they put their mind onto the page in this way that was interesting and meaningful to them. And that it's a record. We have this record of humanity. And so these notebooks may be completely boring to somebody else, but to me, they're interesting and they chart these little bits of my life and how I was reflecting. And when I think about that, I get very emotional. And I think it's like it's important and we're so busy in this day and age. Everything's moving so fast that, in the dark ages, not the dark age, sorry, let me rephrase it. In the olden times, before computers and digital acceleration, there were notebooks and there were journals and there were letters. And much of this interior experience of humanity was written down. And this day and age is it's just glossed over. It's either ignored or glossed over primarily, but it's left to us, the artist, to honor that and to highlight that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We're being bombarded with volumes of information on a daily basis. And, the social media companies are saying, well, you've got to put out this many posts in
Yeah.
order to get picked up by the algorithms.
Ugh, I do not want to be picked up by an algorithm.
I don't. I want to be seen as the person I am and what I'm putting out. And I understand that people are busy, but I do see the value in what you're saying. And those notebooks. For me, what I end up doing is transferring the things I haven't done already forward. So I kind of just keep the outstanding stuff that are still interesting to me moving forward.
Hmm.
Start a new notebook. And
Yeah.
eventually some of that stuff gets worked and some of it doesn't. Some of it
Hmm.
will never see the light of day, but I do think that if someone really wanted to get to know you, it's almost like your journals. Those are very intimate, and
Oh yeah.
it's a snapshot of where you were at in a moment in time. We all go through phases of, dark times, joyful, unhappy, happy, contemplative, grief, all these different things go on in our life, transition. And it's like we are capturing it in those notebooks. So I
Hmm.
journal, I keep a journal. I use my iPhone, I use the Apple Journal. I love
Hmm.
that little app. And I find that in the morning, I tend to do a journal entry. And sometimes I'll throw some images in there. And
Hmm.
because I'm visual and I don't want to read the words only, I want some pictures.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
do find there's a richness in that. So I want to acknowledge that you keep all your journals. I just hope you have a big old bookshelf or some place to, yeah, good.
Yeah, I sort of worry about what to do when, if there's an evacuation notice that goes down, because there's a lot of them. And it's where my head goes. Like that's how devoted I am. But my head goes to the wife, the dog, and the journals.
Mhm.
Everything else can burn, except maybe my bicycle. I should bring my bicycle too.
And we
But
tell the audience that we live in a beautiful part of West Marin County in Northern California. And we do have to live with a go bag ready in the dry months. So
yep.
this is very serious. And I don't know what you're going to do with your book.
It's a big go bag. It's a big
Big
heavy go bag.
backpack or something.
Yeah.
Albert, tell us a little bit about writing as a path to awakening. Can you
Oh
hold
yeah.
the book up and show us the book?
Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so this is the sort of the nonfiction thesis book about writing and mindfulness. And so it's subtitled A Year to Becoming an Excellent Writer and Living the Awakened Life. And it's really about helping, it's a book that's about helping people get over all that stuff we were talking about earlier. The self-doubt, the procrastination, the fear, the worry, the opinioneering, the belief, and reclaiming your authentic artistic self. That's really what the essence of the book is. And it's broken up into 12 chapters for the 12 months of the year, and they're all themed. So they have themed titles like, February is becoming, and April, which is National Poetry Month, is what is April? Blossoming. April is blossoming, and it deals with poetry and the language of possibility, which is what I like to call it. May is imagination. It sort of goes through the seasons that way, um, and there's each chapter has a meditation practice and it has a writing practice. And then there's a little bit of a story in each one of those chapters too to help guide writers along to basically to inspire them to dive into their own creative genius.
It's you've come up with like such a practical yet insightful approach to laying out that book, those chapters. I like
Thank
that.
you.
I think it's
Thank you.
relatable. I think you're in the month and the weather's different in every month, and it's kind
Right.
of using the temperature outside and the weather to kind of get you into the writing mode.
Absolutely. Oh, and people, I get this funny question uh, periodically, and people say, well, if I pick up the book in February, do I have to start, or if I pick up the book in October, do I have to start in January? And I'm like, you can start wherever you want, wherever you feel drawn.
No
But
rules.
it is kind of an interesting experience to do it as a year-long process and to see how things evolve and change creatively for you. Because I designed it really to be cumulative. And so, one lesson sort of building on the next.
Mhm.
until next thing you know, you're just like, oh, it's just flowing. Things are just flowing. I can't stop. And
That's
now I have the
oh,
tools. Yeah, right. And now I have the tools to when inevitably the shit goes down
mhm.
and the invasive mind comes back in and stuff comes up in life, we have illness, we have death, we have divorce, we have sad, all that stuff that is this life comes up to interrupt
Mhm.
our writing, our creativity. Now we have the tools. It's like, oh, okay, even though, my mom is on hospice or whatever, I can still take care of myself because creativity is essential. It's essential to a healthy life, I think. It's
Me too. I
yeah. And to take care of ourselves it doesn't mean that you can't also take care of your mom or your family, but it's like, oh, much more able to take care of this other person or to be present in other areas of my life if I'm engaging in my creativity, if I'm nurturing myself as well. So,
no, I hear you. I agree. So I'm gonna kind of tone down, wind it down, and say that what I'm picking up from you is that writing can truly be a powerful tool for any artist, not
oh,
just
absolutely.
to connect with their deeper spiritual self, their emotional self, and enhance their work in general, whatever they're putting out in the world. Albert, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us and your great energy. It's been really fun and learning about more about you. I mean, I've known you for a long time, but I feel like every time I hang out with you, I learn something new. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Total delight. And I let's keep the conversation going.
Mhm. And to all the smartists out there, remember that your voice is unique and finding it is a journey, as Albert and I just talked about. It takes time, it's there for you. It's a journey worth taking, and writing can be a powerful way to discover that. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss an episode. And next time, I'll be sharing my list of top 10 artist films to spur your inspiration. And these films are a must watch for any artist looking to just be inspired and creative. And Albert knows some of these films because we've shown them locally for our Artist Film Night series here in Northern California. So everybody have a great week. Keep making art, and we'll see you next time on the Smartest Studio Series. Thank you again.